The air smells like warm dust old water, and something faintly sweet like fruit that's been sitting in the sun too long, but refuses to apologize. You're standing at the edge of a garden that isn't quite a secret, but also isn't marked on any scroll. The Nile murmurs in the distance, stretching its limbs lazily under the weight of twilight. You can't see it from here, but you feel it anyway, like the cool part of a pillow or the relief of not having to be anywhere on time. Papyrus rustles behind you. A heron, smug as a retired priest, dips its beak into a clay basin, then leaves without saying thank you. This is Egypt sometime around the 19th dynasty, though no one has yet decided if that's early late or just medium pharaoh. The light is gold, not the shiny ceremonial kind, but the heavy, sleepy kind that dusts everything in stillness. A gardener walks by carrying a wicker basket filled with bruised figs and a single lotus pod. He doesn't look at you, but he hums something low and broken. You probably won't make it through this day. Not because it's hard, but because it's soft. Too soft. The kind of soft that dissolves your plans and tucks them under the sand like a cat covering its tracks. Before we begin, if you enjoy wandering through half-forgotten courtyards and listening to fig trees being gently scolded at sunset, feel free to tap like and subscribe. It helps this sleepy channel bloom. And if you're listening from a distant place, say a small town in Ontario, or a breezy apartment in Hanoi, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's strangely comforting to know who else is dozing beside the Nile tonight. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You pass under a gate woven from reeds tied with strips of linen faded by sun and irrigation cycles. The path is lined with flat stones that once belonged to something important. A chapel perhaps, or a tax office, but now spend their days hosting barefoot footsteps and occasional goats. Ahead, a line of sycamore trees stretches like a line of careful exclamation points. Their roots are wrapped in woven mats to keep the moisture in, and yes, that's a real thing. Ancient Egyptian gardeners knew how to baby their trees, and they did softly, strategically, and sometimes dramatically. There's a man standing at the base of one holding a small ceramic bowl. He's not watering. He's whispering. Something about the wind. Something about a promise. He leans in close, then pours a trickle of water at the tree's roots like he's pouring wine for a friend who's had a hard day. You don't interrupt. You just keep walking sandals, making soft puffs against the baked earth. One major historical fact, ancient Egyptian gardeners were highly respected and often employed at temples or by the elite. They weren't just laborers, they were caretakers of sacred and symbolic life. A healthy fig tree wasn't just nice. It was a sign the gods were still paying attention. A small boy runs past you barefoot and sticky with honey. He's carrying a wooden spoon and giggling like he knows the pharaoh's real name. No one chases him. That's his grandmother's job, and she's still finishing her tea. You pass a square plot of soil surrounded by low mud brick walls. Inside are rows of lettuce leeks and something that looks suspiciously like gossip. A woman is bent over a row of onions, muttering to them under her breath. She stands, stretches, and looks at you. They listen better in the evenings, she says. Mornings are too proud. There's a small shrine near the garden's edge. It's not grand, just a flat stone, a cup of beer, and a handful of dates. The offering is half-hearted. The god, if present, seems to appreciate the gesture anyway. Historians still debate whether these small shrines were officially sanctioned or just the result of people improvising religion like a favorite song. But the onions don't seem to mind. As the sun sinks lower, shadows stretch across the garden like sleepy dogs. The fig trees catch the last light and shimmer slightly as if blushing. You hear someone begin to hum again. The same tune as before, or maybe a new one. It's hard to tell when the notes stretch so slowly across the air. A bird lands nearby and hops once, twice, then leaves. You get the sense it was inspecting your posture. You sit on a low stone ledge and watch the figs sway. A breeze picks up, not dramatic, just enough to carry the smell of wet soil and warm wood. Somewhere someone drops a bucket. No one hurries to retrieve it. The day isn't over, but it's folding itself up gently. And so are you. The ledge beneath you is sun-warmed and deeply cracked like the skin of a wise elephant or a clay tablet that's heard too many secrets. You lean back and feel the weight of the day settle around your shoulders like a well-worn linen wrap. Nearby, a gardener in a wide reed hat is sorting fig leaves into neat piles, too small, too dry, and suspiciously curled. His hands move without hurry. You watch as he pauses to rub a leaf between his fingers, sniffs it, frowns slightly, then drops it into a fourth secret pile. That one's just labeled maybe. Behind him, a mud brick wall is covered in ancient graffiti, carved palm fronds, a figure with oddly square feet, and what might be a recipe for lentil stew depending on who you ask. One odd cultural tidbit: some Egyptian gardeners believed fig trees could remember voices. Not just sounds, but intent. That's why they whispered to them. Encouragement in the evenings, apologies after hot spells, and on rare days singing, though only if you had a decent voice. You stand and stretch. The weight of sleep tugs gently at your spine. You're not tired, just deeply, deliciously slowed. You walk past a row of earthen irrigation channels carved with care and mild frustration. A small frog stares at you, shoo from one of them, unimpressed. A heron watches the frog. You all agree not to intervene. Further along, a wooden archway stands crookedly over a gate. Someone has hung old necklaces from it, beads of turquoise, carved ivory, and one that looks suspiciously like an old fish spine. They clack quietly in the breeze like a wind chime that only tells time in regrets. You duck through and find yourself in a smaller garden. More intimate. Less symmetrical. The kind of place that feels like it was made by accident, but loved on purpose. A woman sits under a fig tree, grinding something in a stone bowl. You don't recognize the smell, earthy, floral, maybe a bit judgmental. She looks up and smiles. "You're late," she says, then goes back to grinding. You sit across from her on the grass, which is patchy and soft and doesn't mind the company. She speaks again. "The fig trees remember things we forget," she says, which is probably why they never rush. She offers you a sip of something from a carved wooden cup. It tastes like mint sunburn and stories you're not quite ready to tell. You thank her. She nods. The breeze picks up again. A fig drops nearby with a soft thump. Neither of you react. You're part of the garden now. One major historical fact: figs were a staple of the Egyptian diet, not just eaten fresh, but dried, fermented into wine or used in offerings. The fig tree was sacred to Hathor, the goddess of fertility, music, and joy, which probably explains why the trees seem smug. A boy walks past, dragging a broken basket filled with snail shells. He's humming something that might be a song or might be an insult. He tips the shells into the soil beside a date palm, shrugs, and moves on. Composting, ancient edition. You close your eyes for a moment. The world narrows to sound, leaves brushing each other, sandals crunching gravel, a priest's chant floating from a temple you can't see. The woman stands and begins to water the tree beside her. She murmurs something as she does, soft, slow syllables in a language you don't speak, but understand anyway. The fig tree shivers, not from wind, just recognition. You rise, dust off your robe. The sun has dipped behind the wall now, but the light still lingers in the air, like something sticky and gold. You keep walking, not because you have to, because the garden asks you to, and that's enough. You walk slowly now, as if your feet have taken a vow of silence. The path curves past low stone basins, their rims worn smooth by years of elbows and careful pours. The water inside is still except for the occasional ripple from a drifting insect or a bird's sudden decision to drink. A pair of sandals sits abandoned beside one basin, neatly placed as if their owner intended to return before realizing they preferred barefoot freedom. A single fig leaf rests on the top step, glossy and theatrical. It could be a message, or just a leaf. Hard to say, really. To your left, two gardeners are arguing gently under a lattice of vines. Not with volume, just an exchange of sighs and eyebrow tilts. One holds a small copper tool. The other holds a basket of wilted herbs. The disagreement, you gather, is over when Basil becomes too dramatic to be useful. They don't seem to need a resolution. Eventually, they both shrug and return to their work. You pass beneath the vines and enter another stretch of garden. This one is orderly irrigation lines dug with mathematical precision, vegetables planted in tidy grids. It smells like effort. Honest, sweaty effort with a hint of cumin. A woman kneels by a row of lettuce, muttering to herself. Not that leaf. That one. Yes, you. Stop drooping. She glances up. Plants behave better when they think someone's watching. She returns to her task with the focus of someone training a very slow army. One major historical fact: the Egyptians developed complex irrigation systems that used canals, dikes, and water-lifting devices like the shaduf, a long wooden pole with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other. Gardeners became hydraulic strategists, moving water like choreographers in linen robes. The woman uses a gourd ladle to redirect water down a narrow channel. The water obeys with reluctant grace like a cat, deciding it might come when called. As you watch, a lizard skitters past your feet, then stops, looks up, nods, and vanishes under a patch of coriander. You pass a small alcove shaded by woven palm fronds. Inside, a man naps beside 3 sacks of onions. One is half open. A papyrus scroll sticks out. It looks like a calendar or perhaps a complaint letter written in verse. His mouth is slightly open, and his hand twitches in his sleep like he's weeding dreams. A child runs past with a stick shaped like a heron. He waves it at the sky, shouting, "I am the river," before disappearing into the squash patch. Somewhere his mother sighs without looking up. You sit for a moment beside a date palm. Its shadow is tall and thin, stretched like it's trying to reach the next garden over. The trunk is rough but comforting against your back. You take a slow breath. Above, the sun shifts and golden light slants through papyrus leaves. Everything feels filtered, light air thought. You lean your head back and watch a single fig swing lazily from its branch, undecided about whether to fall. A gardener approaches, carrying a jar of clay and a brush. He paints something onto the trunk of a sycamore, symbols, loops, and dots. "We mark the trees we trust," he explains, "and the ones that lie about being thirsty." He hands you the brush. Draw something. It helps them remember you. You hesitate, then paint a single curved line, part fig, part smile, part question. The gardener nods. "Good choice. That one means you can stay." You return the brush and walk on. The path opens into a wide courtyard filled with pots. Dozens of them. Tall amphora, squat jugs, delicate-necked jars. All arranged in loose clusters like they've been having conversations and didn't expect to be interrupted. You step carefully between them. Each one seems to hum with memory. A woman sits cross-legged in the center of the courtyard, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees. She's listening, not meditating, not sleeping, just listening. You hear it too, the faint sound of water dripping from one pot to another, the creak of wicker, the low thrum of bees somewhere nearby. The courtyard isn't quiet. It's gentle. She opens one eye. Some of these pots have held figs, she says. Some have held prayers. I'm not sure which is heavier. You nod. Because that feels true. She reaches behind her and holds out a small jug. Smell, she says. You do, it smells like fermenting honey and dust, like something sacred that no longer minds being sticky. One cultural tidbit: in Egypt, old pots were often reused, sometimes for wine, sometimes for oil, and occasionally to store ritual offerings. It wasn't uncommon for gardeners to keep fig mash fermenting beside sacred herbs. The gods apparently had a taste for both sweetness and rot. You set the jug down and continue walking. A small plaque beside a cluster of pots reads, "Whispers go here." You don't whisper anything, but the pots seem to listen anyway. Beyond the courtyard, a colonnade runs east to west. The columns are faded with sun and dust, painted with images of birds that no longer fly but still look wise. A young girl sweeps the floor with a palm broom, pausing only to chase off a particularly judgmental pigeon. You step into the shade. The air changes cooler, quieter, filled with a stillness that smells like crushed herbs and soft stone. A gardener in a pale robe walks past, carrying a basket of figs on her head. She doesn't hold it with her hands. She doesn't need to. Her balance is effortless, her presence unbothered. You follow at a respectful distance as she winds through the pillars. At one point, she hums 3 notes, no more, and a fig drops behind her. She does not turn around. You pick up the fig. It's warm, slightly overripe. The skin soft under your fingers. You don't eat it. Not yet. You walk further into the colonnade until you find a low bench facing a garden pool. The water is dark and still. A single lily floats in the center. Around it, reeds lean in like they're trying to hear a secret. You sit. The fig rests in your palm. A soft breeze brushes your cheek. You exhale. The day is folding inward. So are you. You're still sitting at the edge of the garden pool, the fig now slightly sticky in your hand. The lily hasn't moved. Neither have you. This part of the garden seems to observe time with polite disinterest. Somewhere a breeze pretends to start, rustles a few papyrus leaves, then decides it's not worth the effort. Behind you, footsteps pad softly along the colonnade. A young man in a linen tunic appears, carrying a small clay tablet. He glances at the fig in your hand, nods approvingly, and sits beside you without invitation or apology. This pool, he says, pointing at the water, was once used to reflect the stars. Now we mostly use it to reflect arguments. You don't respond. Not out of rudeness, just because you're pretty sure silence is the right reply. One major historical fact: Egyptians often built reflecting pools into temple gardens and estates, not for decoration, but for astronomical purposes. Priests used them to chart constellations and track seasonal changes. The man dips a stick into the water and draws a circle, then a line through it. "That's the sky last spring," he says completely seriously. You believe him. Because why not? He stands and leaves as suddenly as he arrived. You're alone again, except now there's a sense that even the lily might be judging your posture. You rise and continue walking, slipping through the far end of the colonnade and out into another quadrant of the garden. This one is more rugged. Vines grow in wild, tangled spools. Fruit trees lean in odd directions like they're avoiding polite conversation. A small shrine sits under a date palm. It's shaped like a lion curled into sleep, though the snout has long since crumbled off. Someone's draped a garland of dried garlic around its neck. Possibly devotional, possibly just wishful thinking. A woman in dark blue robes stands nearby holding a shallow bowl of oil. She dips her fingers into it, then flicks drops onto the roots of the trees. This one bears fruit after arguments, she mutters. That one sulks if the moon's too bright. You nod. These things happen. One cultural tidbit: ancient Egyptian gardeners sometimes attributed plant behavior to emotional temperaments, especially with fruit trees. If a tree underperformed, it might be spoken to blessed or even lightly threatened. One record includes a gardener shouting, "If you don't blossom, I'll plant your cousin in your place." She turns to you and says, "Figs like to be flattered. Say something soft to that one." You consider the fig tree in question. It seems indifferent. But you lean close anyway and whisper, "You're doing better than yesterday." A leaf twitches. Or maybe it sighs. The woman smiles and vanishes behind the date palm, leaving behind only the faint scent of pressed olives and sass. You walk further until the earth beneath your feet grows more sandy, more open. A trellis overhead groans under the weight of grapevines. Most are green. A few have turned a dusty purple as if embarrassed by their own ripening. You duck under and enter a grove of fig trees older than the rest. Their trunks are thick bark, pale and flaking like the pages of a long-read story. Here the air feels denser, quieter, like sound isn't banned, just unnecessary. You take a seat on a low stone slab carved with half-faded hieroglyphs. One symbol looks like an eye. One looks like a loaf of bread. One might be a frog with strong opinions. The sun is beginning to slip down the sky again, casting everything in that golden light that makes even cracked pots look holy. You bite into the fig in your hand. It tastes like sun and shadow, and just a little bit like memory. You sit for a while in that grove of old fig trees, chewing slowly. The taste clings gently to your tongue, rich, mellow, with a faint echo of the earth. A breeze moves through this one more committed than the last. It lifts the edges of your robe and rustles the fig leaves like whispered names being remembered. A gardener approaches. He's older, his beard streaked with gray, his tunic patched at the elbow, in a way that suggests function over fashion. He carries a staff, not ceremonial, just helpful, and wears a necklace made entirely of dry fig stems. "First fig of the day," he asks. "Last," you reply. He nods solemnly, as if you've passed a test. Then you're ready. Ready for what he doesn't say. But he turns and walks slowly between the trees. You follow. Of course you do. He leads you to a clearing where several gardeners are gathered around a long stone table. They're not speaking. They're arranging. Bowls of water, bundles of herbs, a few figs sliced and laid out in geometric patterns. You take a step closer. No one stops you. The man gestures toward a low stool. You sit. One major historical fact: ancient Egyptians often held seasonal ceremonies for their crops, not just for harvesting, but to encourage fruit-bearing plants with small communal offerings. These rituals were sometimes private, sometimes public, and often involved food laid out with symbolic geometry. The man picks up a fig slice and places it beside a marjoram leaf. He nods. Another gardener places a pebble beside it. Everyone exhales in approval. It's either a religious rite or the world's slowest board game. Possibly both. You're handed a small dish of pomegranate seeds. No instructions. You place one in front of a curled grape stem. The group murmurs their approval. From somewhere nearby, a stringed instrument begins to play 4 notes, slow and unresolved. A breeze stirs the fig trees. You realize this is less a ceremony and more a lullaby for the garden itself. You don't speak. You don't have to. The man with the fig stem necklace returns, places a cup of wine in front of each gardener, including you. The cups are mismatched. Yours has a small chip on the rim. It feels perfect. He raises his. To those who wait, he says, you raise yours, and to those who ripen slowly. The wine is warm, a little sour, honest. The ceremony ends not with applause or chants, but with silence. Everyone simply stands, stretches, and wanders off. You're left alone again. The grove rustles, the sun lowers, and the fig trees seem pleased. You walk back along the path, leaving behind the clearing where figs were honored like tired kings. The air has changed again, heavier now, but not oppressive. Just thick with evening, the kind of weight that makes every step sound like a whisper. You pass under a row of date palms, each one tied with small bundles of reeds. They're charms, perhaps, or warnings, or just decorations left over from a festival that never officially ended. Some things in Egypt don't have endings. They just gently fade. At the base of one palm, a small ceramic bowl holds half a pomegranate and a pinch of grain. An offering. A snack. A forgotten gesture. Historians still debate whether such objects were devotional or just absent-minded agriculture. A boy crouches nearby, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. They're maps, he says without looking up, but only if you walk them. You nod, unsure if that's metaphor or instruction. In Egypt, it's often both. One fig tree leans dramatically into the path. Its branches reach with a flare that suggests it's asking for attention, or perhaps performing a slow-motion bow. You stop. Place your hand lightly on its bark. The surface is rough, sun-warmed, alive in the way stone never is. One obscure tradition, some Egyptian gardens were designed with symbolic layouts, plants arranged to mirror constellations, with certain trees standing in for deities. It's said that whispering to the fig tree associated with Hathor could bring gentle dreams, or at the very least, sweeter fruit. A gardener appears from the shadows carrying a basket woven with river grass. It's filled with broken fig stems and wilted herbs. He nods toward you. Some trees gossip, he says. That one keeps secrets. You smile. The fig tree, for its part, remains non-committal. Further down the path, a low wall curves around a shallow basin. Water flows gently into it through a reed spout, splashing onto flat stones arranged like a puzzle no one solved. A frog perches on the edge, clearly in charge. You sit on the wall and watch the basin fill, overflow, and spill into the waiting channel below. This is how gardens drink in Egypt, quietly, methodically, as if each drop must first ask permission. You look up. A white heron sails overhead, slow and precise. It lands near the far edge of the grove and begins pecking at the soil, like it's reading a very shallow letter. You keep walking. The ground becomes softer again, sandier. Shadows lengthen. The garden is less orderly here, more wild, like it's remembering who it used to be. A woman is singing in the distance. Not loudly. Not for anyone in particular. The words are ancient, round at the edges. You don't understand them, but your bones seem to. As you walk, you notice small clay tags tied to certain trees. Most are faded. Some are etched with symbols. Others are blank, as if still deciding. You pause beneath a tall sycamore. There's a tag hanging near eye level. It reads simply, almost. You rest your hand on the tree trunk. It leans ever so slightly into your palm, then pulls away. You move on. There's a wall up ahead, low and sun-cracked, with a set of 3 narrow openings shaped like inverted teardrops. You step through the center one, feeling the stone brush your shoulders. Inside is a courtyard. Quiet. Still. A single gardener sits on a stone bench, slicing dried figs and laying them out on a mat to sun. She doesn't look up. Her hands move with the practiced ease of someone who's done this every evening for a very long time. You take a seat opposite her, uninvited but not unwelcome. Some figs are ready before they look like it, she says. Others pretend for weeks. She points to one on the mat. That one's a liar. One major historical fact: dried figs were a staple in ancient Egyptian pantries, stored in clay jars and eaten year-round. They were often sun-dried on woven mats or rooftops, then packed with seeds, nuts, or even wine-soaked herbs for flavor and preservation. The woman offers you a small piece. It's chewy sweet and just a little bitter. A balance, like most good things. A pigeon lands near her feet. She ignores it. The pigeon waits, then leaves in a flurry of gentle offense. Behind you, the wall is painted with faded shapes, tree branches, stars, and what might be a loaf of bread with wings. Possibly religious, possibly culinary ambition. A soft breeze moves through, curling around the courtyard like it's remembering something. The figs on the mat shiver. One rolls slightly. The woman doesn't react. She reaches into a small clay pot and pulls out a handful of dried fig seeds. She tosses them over her shoulder. They scatter on the ground like forgotten punctuation marks. It helps them not feel too proud, she explains. You nod. Obviously. From a narrow side door, a small girl enters holding a reed basket and a piece of folded linen. She walks with the gravity of someone delivering treasure. She lays the cloth over the drying figs, then stands very still as if expecting applause. The older woman nods once. The girl beams, then runs out again, the basket swinging behind her like a comet. The figs are now blanketed in soft shade. The woman exhales. Not tired, not impatient, just done. She stands and leaves through the same narrow door, disappearing like a dream that knew it had overstayed. You sit alone now. The courtyard holds the silence gently, like an old friend who's heard all your stories, but still likes your company. The wall glows with the last light of the day. The shadows grow softer, warmer, longer. You lie back on the bench, your spine pressing into ancient stone. The smell of figs and dust and sun still clings to everything. And you wonder, not loudly, just quietly, how many names these trees have held, how many whispers they've kept, and how many they've let go. You rise slowly from the bench, the imprint of ancient stone still lingering between your shoulder blades. The fig courtyard fades behind you, not vanishing, just slipping quietly into the edges of memory. You pass through the low doorway again, back into the dusty gold of late evening. The sun has softened. It leans against the horizon, now stretching its light like honey. Everything it touches turns amber, the stone walls, the leaves, your own fingers. You walk slower now, not from fatigue, but because the air itself has taken on the texture of lullaby. You follow a narrow path that curls behind the garden walls. On one side, a canal glimmers with shallow water. On the other, a line of fig trees stands like quiet guardians, their limbs arched and heavy, their roots exposed like secrets only the soil understands. A young man kneels near one of the trees, his arms buried elbow-deep in the earth. He pulls out a fistful of damp soil, sniffs it, then gently presses it back into place. Too many footprints, he mutters. The roots get shy. He doesn't acknowledge you beyond that. Just leans in and whispers something to the fig, his voice low, reverent, almost teasing. One cultural tidbit: some Egyptian gardeners believed fig trees would refuse to fruit if they overheard gossip or sarcasm in their vicinity. Garden paths were kept hushed, and scolding trees was strictly a private affair. Public compliments, however, were encouraged. The man stands and brushes dirt from his robe. He gives you a look, half amusement, half invitation. They like songs too, he says, but only if they're true. You nod as if you've known this your entire life. The canal gurgles softly beside you, carrying stray petals, specks of pollen, and a few insects with serious opinions. You trail your fingers through the water as you walk, letting it cool your skin and murmur its own secrets. Further down the path, the trees thin, giving way to a larger clearing. Here the garden opens up. An open-air shelter stands in the center, its reed roof slouched from years of sun. Beneath it, low cushions form a wide circle around a raised fire basin. No one is here yet, but signs of presence remain: clay cups stacked neatly, a platter of dried figs and dates, and a set of reed flutes laid carefully atop a folded linen cloth. You take a seat on one of the cushions. The fire is unlit, but warm coals still glow in the ashes, faint and orange. After a while, people begin to arrive, not all at once, but in slow waves, like the tide deciding whether to stay. Gardeners, temple attendants, an older man with a walking stick shaped like a lotus stalk. They don't speak at first. Just sit. Rest. Let the evening hold them like a deep bowl. Then quietly, someone begins to play a reed flute. A soft melody looping and incomplete, like a memory being hummed into shape. One major historical fact: music played a significant role in Egyptian agricultural rituals. Specific melodies were associated with planting, harvesting, and even the care of particular trees. Some temples employed musicians specifically to perform in gardens, not for humans but for the plants. A woman hums in harmony with the flute. Another begins clapping softly once every few beats. A rhythm takes form, gentle, unhurried. Someone offers you a fig from the platter. You accept it, take a bite. It's sweet but grounded, like sunlight translated into sugar. You close your eyes. You are surrounded by music and breath, and the scent of earth cooling under stars not yet revealed. The trees around the clearing seem to lean in, listening. Not out of curiosity, but out of respect. The music winds down, not with a finale, but with a sigh. The flutes fade. The clapping quiets. And for a few long moments, no one moves. The night begins to unfurl around you, slow and full. Then the soft shuffling of feet. Cushions are gathered. Cups are rinsed in silence. One by one, the gardeners drift away, not in a hurry, just with the gentle inevitability of water returning to its bed. You remain seated. The fire basin glows faintly. A fig stem rolls across the stone, nudged by the breeze. A woman lingers nearby, her arms full of fig branches, leaves, stems, and small, unripe fruits still attached. She kneels and begins sorting them into bundles by size and color. Not for cooking, not for sale, just sorting. She looks up and says, "We press them into the temple walls." You raise an eyebrow. For texture, she adds, as if that explains everything. One odd cultural practice: some temple plaster in Egypt was mixed with organic matter, leaves, fig stems, even bits of vine, to create textures that reflected agricultural life. Scholars still debate whether this was symbolic, functional, or simply the result of priests being enthusiastic composters. She finishes bundling, ties the stems with twine, and lays them beside the basin. Then, before leaving, she pats the ground next to you twice. Not a goodbye. More like a reminder the earth is still listening. You rise and walk back into the garden. The trees are mostly shadows now, their trunks dark silhouettes, their leaves whispering in languages that don't rely on vowels. You pass a cluster of small shrines nestled between fig roots. Most are simple stones, broken bowls, a coin or two. One has a single feather balanced atop it, impossibly still despite the wind. You crouch. Add your own offering, a fig stem from your pocket saved from earlier, without realizing why. The wind shifts. A leaf brushes your shoulder like a thank you. You move on, following a path lit only by memory and a few distant torches. A quiet courtyard opens before you. You recognize it, the same place where fig slices were laid out to dry. The same bench where the woman sorted sweetness from shade. But now the figs are gone. Only the woven mat remains, its fibers curled from heat and time. You sit once more back against the cool stone wall. Above, the sky is opening. Stars step carefully into view, and somewhere nearby, a fig tree lets go of its ripest fruit. It lands with a soft thud you don't hear. But the garden does. The bench beneath you has cooled since you last sat here. It no longer holds the heat of the day, only the calm of evening worn smooth by weather, and the weight of quiet conversations now long dissolved into air. You look up. The stars are clearer now, not loud, not boastful, just quietly confident, blinking slowly in the kind of sky that makes you forget urgency ever existed. A fig tree leans nearby. You remember it, its branches tilted with casual dignity, its roots exposed like someone halfway through telling a story. It hasn't moved, but it feels closer now, as if the night draws everything in. Somewhere behind the tree, soft footsteps scrape along gravel. A gardener approaches, older than most, with shoulders that have memorized decades of sunlight. He carries a shallow clay bowl filled with crushed fig pulp and flower petals. He sits beside you, not speaking at first, just breathing with the rhythm of someone who's spent more time outdoors than indoors. Then he says, "They dream at night, you know, the fig trees." You look at him. He doesn't smile. He's not joking. One major historical fact: ancient Egyptians associated night with the renewal of life, not sleep as absence but as restoration. Some texts suggest nighttime rituals were performed for plants, especially fruit-bearing ones, to encourage regeneration and spiritual growth. He sets the bowl on the ground and dips his fingers into it. Gently, he smears a line of the mixture onto the base of the tree's trunk. "It's not food," he says. "It's a reminder that we're paying attention." You nod. "That seems fair." A bat flutters overhead, all wing and purpose. The man watches it go, then adds, "We used to call those fig thieves, but I think they're just impatient." He rises with a grunt and walks away, leaving the bowl and his silence behind. You stay there a moment longer, staring at the smear on the bark. The scent of ferment and crushed petals rises with the air. It's sweet, a little sour, and strangely grounding. You stand and wander toward the edge of the courtyard, where a row of small lamps has been lit. The light is golden and lazy, flickering in soft rhythm against the cracked walls. In the distance, you hear laughter, not loud. Just a few overlapping voices, warm and easy. You follow the sound through a garden gate half swallowed by ivy. Inside is another gathering, this one smaller, even quieter than the last. A group of gardeners and temple staff sits in a circle on worn blankets. A basket of figs, nuts, and flatbread rests in the middle. A woman is speaking slowly and without hurry, telling a story. Something about a fig tree that refused to bear fruit until it overheard someone sing to it in the wrong key. She insists this is true. No one argues. You take a seat near the edge, welcomed with a nod and a passing bowl. Inside, pickled dates and a single sprig of mint. You take a bite. The flavor is bold, unexpected. Your eyebrows lift involuntarily. Someone notices and chuckles softly. The woman continues. In her version, the fig tree eventually bore so much fruit, it toppled sideways, not out of generosity, but embarrassment. The moral, she says, is unclear, but the tree is still there if you want to check. A young boy yawns nearby. His head drifts onto his grandmother's shoulder. She strokes his hair with the rhythm of someone who's done this across generations. The fire in the center crackles quietly. No one stokes it. It seems to feed on the silence. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, just to rest in the middle of it all. When you open your eyes again, the story has ended. The woman now hums a tune with no lyrics, no name, just the echo of old air moving through old chords. You rise quietly and walk toward the garden wall. The others remain seated, content in their circle of dusk and embers. You find a small gate carved with fig leaves and sun discs. It opens without effort, revealing a narrow path that curves into darkness, not ominous, just unknown. You follow it. Along the way, niches in the wall hold small altars, some with fruit, some with beads. One has a dried fish laid across a folded reed mat, accompanied by what looks suspiciously like a poem written in crooked lines. You pass them without speaking, as if words might unsettle whatever they're holding in place. Then the path opens into a small chamber, not a room exactly, but a space protected by tree trunks, vines, and the suggestion of walls. Here everything smells richer, earthier, like damp bark, old figs, and the pause before rainfall. At the center of the space sits a single ancient fig tree, larger than the others, wiser. Its roots curl like sleeping serpents. Its branches stretch high and then droop like tired eyelids. You sit at its base, not out of obligation, out of instinct. A breeze passes through, cool and aware. You feel it against your skin like a page being gently turned. One cultural mystery: some Egyptian texts reference the first fig, a legendary tree believed to have existed before temples, before even the Nile. It was said to contain the memory of every whispered wish, every forgotten name, every fruit never picked. Scholars disagree whether this was metaphor or misplaced myth. But here, under this tree, metaphor feels very close to truth. You rest your back against the trunk, close your eyes. The earth beneath you feels warm and old, not heavy, just settled. The tree creaks above a soft wooden exhale. You don't speak, you don't think, you just breathe. A fig drops nearby. It lands with a soft sound, then rolls once toward your hand. You don't open your eyes. You just smile. You're still sitting there beneath the great fig tree long after the night has laid itself down across the garden like a soft wool blanket. The stars are thick now, crowded and quiet, and the air tastes like dusted cinnamon and cooled clay, the kind of air that forgets how to hurry. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the roots beneath you, laced like an old story beneath your spine. The fig that rolled to your hand earlier has remained untouched. It seems content just to be near you, like a sleepy dog that only needs your presence, not your attention. Eventually, you rise, not out of urgency, more like drifting upward on a sigh. The tree gives no protest, no farewell, just keeps breathing in its wooden, slow-time way. You walk back the way you came, guided by torches that someone else has lit, possibly hours ago. Or maybe they've always been there. It's hard to say. Memory in this garden is as fluid as the Nile during flood season, full of Ben's stories and the occasional crocodile-shaped metaphor. You pass a small stone tablet pressed into the base of a wall. Its carvings are almost worn smooth, but you can still make out the general idea: a figure offering fruit to a tree, while another figure behind it offers water to the sky. One major historical fact: many Egyptian tomb and temple walls included depictions of agricultural offerings not just to gods but to plants themselves. In some households, trees were thought to house small divine spirits or ancestors, requiring the same reverence as shrines. The torchlight flickers across the carvings. The tree in the image appears pleased. The water in the sky less so. You continue walking. Eventually, you reach a narrow grove where small benches form a half-circle, facing a low stage made of packed earth and old planks. The benches are empty now, but a lantern swings from a crooked fig branch above the center. It creaks slightly, as if rehearsing applause. A man appears from the shadows holding a scroll. He unrolls it carefully and reads aloud. His voice is low, unpolished, the kind that's used more for weathering than for performance. Tonight's reading, apparently, is an ode to the patience of trees. It contains exactly 4 metaphors, 6 pauses for dramatic effect, and 1 vivid description of fig sap as the slow thought of wood. You sit on the back bench. The fig trees sway around you like an approving audience. He finishes. No applause. Just silence that feels oddly satisfied. One obscure cultural tidbit. In certain temple schools, students were required to compose poetry addressed directly to the plants of temple gardens. Some poems remain praising the forgiveness of figs and the shade that doesn't ask questions. You close your eyes and lean your head back. Above, the branches knit together against the sky, catching a few constellations like wayward crumbs. The man rolls up his scroll bows not to the crowd, but to the tree behind him and vanishes. You stay seated a moment longer, because why rush? The grove slowly empties of sound, though technically it was never full. What remains is a kind of acoustic hush, the stillness after something meaningful, but not quite nameable, has occurred. You rise again and drift down another winding path, bordered on both sides by fig trees, now casting long, stretching shadows across the ground. Their branches arch above you like a wooden hallway lined with soft rustles and the occasional lazy creak. You come across a small wooden table near the garden's edge. On it sits a single scroll, unrolled halfway, held down by 2 fig stems shaped into gentle curves. Next to it, a clay cup still warm from tea, possibly abandoned, possibly waiting. The scroll bears a list of names. Not people. Trees. Each entry is followed by a short description. North wall fig. Ripens too early, but forgives easily. Courtyard twin. Stubborn poetic sleeps poorly. Temple gatekeeper. Listens more than it should. One major historical fact: ancient Egyptian scribes occasionally catalogued not just plant species, but individual plants by location and personality. These records were found in estate logs, temple reports, and even letters between gardeners. You smile at the list. You add 1. Lantern Grove Elder. Tells stories without opening its mouth. The ink you use is slightly smudged, but it fits. You keep walking and arrive at a terrace that overlooks the Nile. The river glows faintly in the moonlight, moving in that slow, deliberate way rivers do when they know everyone's asleep. Below, torchlights dot the water, small boats drifting by, silent as moths. Somewhere someone plays a flute, but far enough away that you're not sure if it's real or memory. You sit on the edge of the terrace wall. The stone beneath you is cool, whispering the chill of night into your spine. Then a voice beside you. They used to throw figs into the river. You turn to see a woman dressed in temple robes watching the water like she's waiting for it to confess something. Offerings, you ask. She shrugs. Prayers. Memories. Fruit that no longer tasted like itself. One sentence of scholarly uncertainty. It's still debated whether offerings of fruit into the Nile were widespread practice or local folklore passed down by temple communities. The line between ritual and habit was often blurred. She hands you a fig. This one is smaller, darker, its skin split at the seam, like it's just barely holding on to its sweetness. You toss it gently into the river. It floats for a moment, then vanishes beneath the surface like a thought you meant to remember, but decided to let go. The woman nods. You sit together in silence. Above, a few stars fall, or perhaps you blinked. Either way, the sky rearranges itself, as if shifting into bedtime posture. And the garden behind you exhales. You linger on the terrace wall, feet dangling just above a garden that no longer seems fully awake or fully asleep. The fig trees behind you are still but not empty. There's a fullness to their silence, the kind that comes after a long day of listening. The moon is high now, though not sharp. Its light is filtered through thin cloud brushed across the land like milk over stone. Everything glows slightly, trees, bricks, even your skin, as if the garden has remembered how to dream. You leave the terrace and drift back through the outer grove, retracing a path that barely exists anymore. Somewhere behind you, the soft splash of river water. Somewhere ahead, the outline of a wall you passed hours ago. There's an old wooden door you hadn't noticed before, tucked between two fig trees, half swallowed by ivy. It creaks open without resistance. You step inside. It's not a room exactly, just a sheltered alcove open to the night sky with woven mats layered over the floor and fig branches curling into its corners like lazy scribbles. A small oil lamp flickers on a stone ledge, throwing shadows that stretch and shrink like tired dancers. You lie down. The mat cradles you better than expected, like it knows you've walked a full circle. One major historical fact: wealthier Egyptian households often had secluded garden alcoves like this part, shrine part retreat, used for prayer, poetry, sleep, or simply the act of sitting still while the world turned. You stretch out and fold your hands over your stomach. The garden breathes around you. One final cultural curiosity. In some regions, it was believed that fig trees would not bear fruit unless they heard a kind word at least once a day. Entire families took turns whispering praise. Some trees reportedly became spoiled from compliments. You close your eyes and whisper to the nearest branch, "You've done well." The fig tree says nothing, but it doesn't need to. Because tonight, the garden holds you gently, like fruit not yet picked, like sleep that doesn't ask questions. And now everything softens. The fig leaves hush their rustling. The soil grows still beneath your back. Even the night birds seem to pause, waiting for one more breath before dreams begin. The moon shifts higher, bathing the garden, in a light so pale and sleepy, it might as well be memory. You lie there, body quiet, breath slower than before. Around you, old branches stretch not to reach, but to rest. In the distance, water still hums its gentle lullaby, winding through old stone channels, slipping beneath fig roots, whispering through reeds that no longer sway. Every corner of the garden exhales. You imagine each tree as a book long closed, each stone a hand that once held flame. You think of the gardener's basket of fig stems, the woman's linen cloth, the poem carved beside the canal, the strange, sweet stillness of a courtyard empty but never lonely. All of it lingers now, not as thoughts but as texture, as if the very air has become soft parchment, as if time has decided to lean back for a while and let you drift. You don't need to move. You don't need to remember. The fig trees will remember for you. They've heard it all before: your steps, your questions, your quiet. And still they ripen, still they wait. So breathe once more, a little deeper now. Let the dust settle. Let the shadows lengthen. Let the warmth of day curl up beside you and fall asleep first. You are part of the garden now, and the garden knows how to keep you. Sleep now, slowly, sweetly, like a fig ripening beneath the stars.